Most people think $100,000 is just a stepping stone on the way to $1 million. But here's the surprising truth. With steady investing, hitting that first six-figure mark puts you 1/3 of the way there, not in dollars, but in time. And understanding why changes everything about how you build wealth. Using a simple example, investing $100 per week at 8% annual returns. It takes about 12 years to hit $100,000. Reaching $1 million takes around 36 years total. That's 12 out of 36 years, 1/3 of the journey right there. In this video, I'll show you the exact timeline and why the math flips after the first 100,000. If you want more breakdowns like this, hit subscribe. It helps me make more content like this. The key is understanding why that first 100,000 feels so slow and why everything after it moves much faster. So why does building that first 100,000 feel like such a grind? At the beginning, progress is dominated almost entirely by your contributions. Every week you're putting money aside, but the growth looks small compared to the effort. Psychologically, that's tough, and it's the stage where most people give up. They don't yet see the compounding in action, so it feels like nothing is happening. Here's the common misconception. If it takes around 12 years to save up the first 100,000, many assume it will take another 12 to reach 200,000. That sounds like a straight line, but investing doesn't work that way. Growth curves upward. This mistake is sometimes called the linear fallacy, the idea that progress depends only on repeating the same grind, when in fact, your earlier efforts start paying you back. And that's exactly why the first milestone is so critical. Let's put actual numbers to this. If you save $100 every week, that's $5,200 per year. Keep that up for about 12 years and you'll have contributed $62,400 of your own money. But here's the kicker. Your account balance won't show $62,400. With an average 8% annual return, which is a conservative inflation-adjusted figure based on long-term market history, the account will total just over $100,000. About $38,000 of that is pure growth, created by compounding. That's nearly 40% of the balance, even in this slow stage. When you're starting out, it doesn't feel that way. The early years are heavy lifting because your deposits dwarf the returns. Each $100 contributed seems to move the balance far more than market growth. This makes it feel like you're doing all the work when in reality, you're laying the foundation for the stage where compounding becomes visible. Think of it like pushing a snowball uphill. Hard effort, slow progress, but necessary to set up that downhill momentum later. That's why so much of this stage comes down to behavior. Numbers matter, but discipline matters more. You're really building a habit, consistency, saving regularly, sticking to the plan, and resisting the temptation to quit just because the balance looks unimpressive at first. As investor Charlie Munger once said, the first 100,000 is a bitch, but you've got to do it. And it's true. The difficulty is real, but so are the rewards once compounding has something meaningful to work with. Breaking through that first six-figure balance is more than just hitting a round number. It's proof of concept. It's the moment you see your account balance grow from both your discipline and your money's own output. That shift is powerful because it changes how you see the journey. You stop wondering whether investing works and start realizing the growth engine is already running in the background. And here's the turning point. Once that 100,000 foundation is built, the momentum changes. Personal contributions matter less. Market growth begins to play a bigger role in pushing the balance higher. The workload gradually shifts from your hands to the compounding effect itself. What happens next might surprise you. Instead of taking 12 more years to double your money, the second 100,000 tends to show up in about half that time. And this is where the story really starts to bend in your favor. What happens next is that progress speeds up. Once you've reached 100,000, the journey to 200,000 no longer mirrors the slow climb of the first stage. It happens much faster. With the same $100 per week at 8% annual return, hitting your first 100,000 takes about 12 years, but doubling it to 200,000 doesn't take another 12. It typically takes closer to 6 more years, bringing the total timeline to around 18 years altogether, so the sequence becomes easy to remember. 12 years for the first 100K, 6 years for the next 100K, 18 years total. That shift happens because compounding has a much larger base to work on. Your contributions haven't changed, you're still adding $100 a week, but the money already in your account is now working harder while you sleep. The same habit suddenly produces results far faster, not because you're saving more or taking more risks, but because the snowball has enough size to roll forward on its own. The numbers also reveal an important psychological turning point. At the 200,000 mark, you've put in about $94,000 of your own money. The rest, roughly $106,000, came entirely from growth. That means the account is now generating more wealth on its own than you have personally contributed. This is often the first time investors feel like they are being carried forward rather than doing all the heavy lifting themselves. At the 200,000 mark, The journey to a million looks very different once you consider time instead of just dollar amounts. This is where people often get tripped up. The title says it clearly. 200,000 is not halfway. It's 1/3 of the way there when measured in timeline, not dollars. Here's what that means. Under the $100 per week at 8% example, you reach 100,000 in about 12 years. Hitting 1 million takes roughly 36 years in total. That makes 100,000 1/3 of the way in terms of time. Now here's the critical point. By 18 years, your balance reaches about 200,000. That's halfway through the 36 years, but you've only traveled 1/5 of the distance to 1 million in money. Don't confuse half of the time with half the money. That distinction shows how powerfully compounding accelerates after the foundation stage. While it feels tempting to think of 200,000 as the halfway marker, the truth is that the curve bends sharply after 100,000. By the time you get to 200,000, the remaining years are shorter relative to the growth ahead. Let's make this concrete. Imagine you hold steady at $100 a week. At 8% annually, 36 years brings you to that 1 million finish line. On paper, that sounds daunting, but the contribution math changes how you see it. Across nearly 4 decades, you put in just about $187,000 total out of your own pocket. Yet, the balance doesn't stop at 187,000. The difference more than 800,000 comes purely from growth. This is why time matters more than intensity. Your role is front-loaded. Once compounding gains control, the money does most of the lifting without you. At 200,000, that logic becomes visible. 8% on 200,000 generates over $16,000 per year with no extra input. For most people, that's comparable to how much they can save through months of disciplined labor. So at this stage, you're not just adding with effort. Your account itself is producing the momentum and is producing results that rival parts of your income. That shift signals that wealth building has entered a much easier lane. In the beginning, every deposit feels crucial. You don't trust growth because it isn't visible yet. But by the time you have 200,000, you start to see annual increases larger than your total contributions for the year. That flips your perspective. Saving feels more satisfying because the growth confirms your effort was worth it. Some investors respond by boosting their contributions not because they suddenly struck it rich, but because the proof of progress motivates them to push harder. Adding $150 or $200 a week at this stage stacks on top of a compounding engine that's already running at full speed. Volatility is often seen as the enemy of investing. But the truth is, it can be one of your greatest allies if you use it correctly. Let's be honest. The fear you feel during a downturn is real. Imagine opening your account and watching a $200,000 balance fall to $160,000 in just a few months. It feels like years of work have vanished. That emotional gut punch is what causes most people to panic and stop investing. Or even worse, sell out entirely. But what looks like a disaster in the moment is actually the exact opportunity that multiplies your future results if you keep your system running. Here's how it works in practice. Imagine you're still adding $100 a week. During a market drop, each contribution buys you more shares because prices are temporarily lower. At first, your balance falls and it hurts to see. But those extra shares quietly set you up for bigger gains when the recovery comes. And history shows it always has. Every past bear market, from the crash of 1929 to the dot-com bust, the financial crisis of 2008, and the sharp drop in 2020 was followed by a full recovery and eventually new highs. This is backed by long-term data. Historically, the stock market has averaged close to 10% annual returns over the last century. Our example uses a conservative 8% to reflect inflation-adjusted expectations, which keeps things realistic. The lesson here is clear. Short-term volatility may feel like chaos, but the long game has been remarkably consistent. The challenge, of course, is behavior. When balances fall, the instinct is to stop contributing until things feel safe, but that instinct works against you. To flip volatility into your ally, the key habit is to make your contributions automatic. That way, when the market stumbles, you keep buying without hesitation. Think of how this played out during the financial crisis of 2008. Many investors froze, pausing contributions or pulling money out until the market settled. But those who stuck to their weekly deposits through the downturn saw a very different outcome. They bought more shares at the lowest prices, and when the rebound came, their balances grew much faster. That's why in past crashes, the investor who stayed consistent not only recovered quicker, but ended up with a larger balance than those who tried to time the market. Reaching 100,000 isn't just hitting a round number. It's the point where your money begins to grow faster than your effort alone. It proves consistency and discipline build the foundation for compounding to take over. From that point, every additional milestone arrives quicker, not because you're working harder, but because the growth engine is running on its own. Here's a quick recap. $100 a week at 8% gets you to 100,000 in about 12 years. 200,000 in roughly 18 years, and 1 million in around 36 years. With only about 187,000 coming from your pocket and the rest from growth. If you don't know where to start, pick any amount you can automate, $20, $50, or $100 a week, and set up an automatic transfer today. Decades from now, you'll thank yourself for starting now. If you found this breakdown useful, hit that like button and subscribe for more wealth building insights. And tell me in the comments, how much could you start investing this week? Even if it's just $20, that's your first step toward that first 100,000. Remember, the first 100,000 is the hardest, but it's also the most important, because once you have it, the money starts working harder than you ever could. Start now, stay consistent, let compounding do the rest.